When River Monsters first hit television, nobody could have predicted it would become one of Animal Planet's biggest successes. Jeremy Wade quickly turned into a global icon, traveling the world to track down chilling legends and pulling in creatures that looked straight out of nightmares. Yet after 9 seasons at the top, the show came to a sudden stop, and fans were left wondering why. Was it slipping ratings, creative exhaustion, or something far darker behind the scenes? Now, at 69, Wade has finally opened up, and his explanation paints a very different picture of why River Monsters really ended. Jeremy Wade was born in Ipswich, United Kingdom, on March 23, 1956. At a young age, he moved with his family to the village of Nayland, where he attended Dean Close School. His father was a vicar, but little is known about his mother. It was along the banks of Suffolk's River Stour in East Anglia that Wade first discovered his passion for fishing. As a boy, he would spend countless hours by the water, drawn to it in the same way others might be drawn to the mountains. His first attempts at fishing, around the age of 7 or 8, were clumsy and unsuccessful, but after a school friend showed him the basics and he landed his first catch, he was hooked. His parents encouraged his independence, often letting him spend entire days outdoors exploring new fishing spots, something that would shape his lifelong pursuit of adventure. After finishing school, Wade studied zoology at Bristol University and later earned a postgraduate teaching certificate in biological sciences from the University of Kent. His first steady job was as a teacher in his early 20s, but the classroom was not where his future lay. He moved to London for a year, working as a motorcycle messenger, and in his mid-20s, he began traveling. A trip to India became a turning point. While exploring the rivers there, he sold a couple of fishing articles to magazines. The pay was modest, just a handful of pounds, but it planted the idea that he could turn his passion into a career. For a time, Wade lived without a clear long-term path, taking jobs only long enough to fund his next trip. The one exception was a 3.5-year stint at an advertising agency, the longest he had ever stayed in one position until later in life. But adventure kept calling. In 1982, with only £200 in his pocket, he set out on his first international fishing expedition, flying aboard an Ariana Afghan DC-10 bound for India. There, he caught his first Himalayan mahseer, a powerful freshwater fish, and his desire to keep exploring only grew stronger. The years that followed were marked by a mix of discovery and danger. He lived simply, saving what little he could for each new journey, and ventured into places like Nepal, Thailand, South America, China, and the Congo. He faced malaria on the Congo River and political suspicion while fishing in the Mekong during the tense Cold War years, yet he never abandoned his path. In 1992, Wade poured his savings into self-publishing a fishing book. It was a financial disaster. 2,000 unsold copies left him broke, and it took years of selling books one by one to bookshops before he recovered. Still, he refused to give up. His love of fishing and storytelling would eventually lead him to television. The turning point came when a producer spotted a newspaper photo of Wade holding a massive freshwater catch from the Amazon. That image led to his first documentary, Jungle Hooks, which followed him back into the Amazon basin. There, he caught a 200-pound arapaima and faced one of the most harrowing moments of his life. During filming, the single-engine plane carrying Wade and his crew lost power on its descent. The tops of the rainforest trees rushed closer until the aircraft clipped a rubber tree and crash-landed in a swamp. Miraculously, all 5 passengers survived without injury. The experience left Wade with a fear of flying, but his work forced him to face it head-on. Jungle Hooks opened the door to more opportunities. A few years later, Wade was given the chance to create a limited series called Killer Catfish. This production took him to India's Kali River to investigate a string of mysterious drownings. Locals speculated about whirlpools or crocodiles, but Wade followed another lead: the goonch catfish. This massive species, capable of growing larger than a human, was rumored to have developed a taste for human remains from funeral pyres placed along the riverbanks. To lure the creature, Wade staged a fire by the water's edge, and before long, the fish appeared. After a tense struggle, even swimming one-handed across dangerous currents while clinging to his fishing rod, he finally managed to land it. The catch was released back into the river, but the story made for captivating television. The episode, which many consider Wade's favorite, combined mystery, danger, and triumph. Its success caught the attention of Animal Planet, paving the way for River Monsters, the series that would make Jeremy Wade one of the most recognizable figures in adventure television. River Monsters premiered on April 5, 2009, and quickly became the series most closely tied to Jeremy Wade's name. At first glance, the idea of watching someone travel the globe to fish might not sound like edge-of-your-seat entertainment, but the show was never just about fishing. Wade built it as part mystery, part adventure, and part science lesson. Each episode unfolded like a detective story, with rumors, eyewitness accounts, and local legends leading to the reveal of a real-life aquatic creature at the very end. That formula hooked audiences far beyond the usual circle of anglers. At the heart of it all, Wade positioned himself not only as a fisherman, but also as a conservationist and educator. He often emphasized that the series was a chance to spotlight the creatures living in rivers and lakes, many of which people had never even heard of. His goal was simple, but powerful. If viewers learned about these animals, they might start caring about the fragile ecosystems they inhabit. His commitment went beyond the cameras. He worked alongside scientists in places like South Africa and the Bahamas, tagging bull sharks and tiger sharks for research, and helped collect DNA samples from endangered fish species. River Monsters was never just about catching big fish. It was about protecting them and telling their stories. Season 1 set the tone right away, carrying Wade from the Amazon to Spain, India, Texas, and beyond. Each journey offered not only an encounter with extraordinary species, but also the thrill of discovery. In one early episode, he tracked down the alligator gar, a fish with a prehistoric appearance and a reputation for attacking people. The legend stemmed from a 1932 report of a gar assaulting a young girl. Wade's search brought him to Texas, where he wrestled a 123-pound gar to shore. The battle left him with a minor injury, a reminder that these so-called monsters were every bit as formidable as their legends suggested. But the season's most chilling moment arrived in episode 6, Amazon Flesh Eaters. Here, Wade pursued one of the most unsettling fish in the world, the kandiru asu. Unlike its smaller and infamous cousin, which has a notorious reputation among swimmers, the kandiru asu was larger, more aggressive, and far more disturbing in its habits. Only a few inches long, it could latch onto other fish, or, in rare cases, people, using razor-sharp teeth to carve circular wounds. For Wade, the kandiru asu ranked among the most revolting creatures he ever handled. Despite dealing with piranhas and sawfish that looked like living weapons, it was this finger-sized catfish that unsettled him most. Slimy, wriggling, and equipped with tiny, glowing eyes, it was the kind of animal that could make even a seasoned adventurer shudder. The investigation took a darker turn when Wade teamed up with Dr. Lucia Rapp at the National Institute of Amazonian Research. Among jars of preserved specimens, she shared stories of medical examiners who had mistaken kandiru asu attacks for gunshot wounds. In one case, bodies thought to be victims of violence were found hollowed out, their organs and blood consumed, with the small fish packed inside the cavities. The so-called bullet holes were, in fact, the entry points of these relentless scavengers. Now, Season 2 of River Monsters took Jeremy Wade on a journey across the globe: Thailand, Africa, India, and the United States, chasing fish that most people only hear about in legends. Out of all the incredible encounters that season, one story in particular stands above the rest. The adventure opened with Demon Fish, an episode that brought Wade back to the Congo River. He admitted that the journey there was exhausting and dangerous, and the reality behind the camera was far from glamorous. While television edits make the action look constant, much of the trip involved waiting, dealing with setbacks, and facing real risks on the ground. Securing permits and simply finding a working boat ate up an entire week. Crossing into the opposite side of the river would have required another week of red tape, something they didn't have time for. But the real tension came from the locals. Around the time Wade and his crew arrived, a villager went missing while fishing, and that man happened to be the chief's brother. The disappearance and the arrival of outsiders were immediately linked in the minds of the villagers. Some suspected the chief himself, while others were convinced the foreign crew had something to do with it. What Wade didn't learn until much later was that certain villagers were even preparing to take violent action against the team, arming themselves with rocks to deal with the supposed culprits. Despite the danger, Wade pressed on and finally faced the fish he had been pursuing for decades: the Goliath tigerfish. This monstrous predator of the Congo basin is infamous for its razor-sharp teeth that look eerily similar to a shark's. Wade had spent 6 years making 3 separate trips into the region in search of it, and this time he landed one: a 78-pound tigerfish, the prize he had been chasing for nearly 25 years. The fish sprawled across his chest, its size and ferocity undeniable. Tragically, while Wade usually releases his catches, this one did not survive the attempt to return it to the water, marking a bittersweet end to his long pursuit. The following season carried the same spirit of exploration. Wade traveled to New Zealand, Argentina, Papua New Guinea, Japan, and the Solomon Islands, continuing his quest to uncover the mysteries of rare freshwater creatures. But one catch in Season 3, deep in the remote rivers of Australia, was unlike anything he had ever shown before. In an episode fittingly titled Chainsaw Predator, Wade encountered the large-toothed sawfish, a creature so strange it seemed designed by an engineer rather than nature. Nearly 7 feet long, with a rostrum lined with 39 sharp teeth, its snout looked exactly like a chainsaw blade. Though it resembled a shark, it was in fact a type of ray, using its saw-like snout not as a weapon against people, but as a tool to slash through schools of fish, mollusks, and crustaceans. Beneath the surface of its bizarre appearance, the rostrum also housed electrosensory organs, allowing the sawfish to detect the faintest signals from prey hidden in the murky water. Despite its intimidating look, the largest toothed sawfish posed no threat to people. Sadly, it is now listed as endangered, though it can still be found in certain tropical and freshwater regions across the world. The one Wade hauled from the dark Australian river, its body lit only by his headlamp, was both otherworldly and breathtaking. Now, at first glance, it might have seemed like the River Monsters crew had it easy. Most episodes showed Jeremy Wade patiently casting lines, baiting hooks, and waiting for something to bite, which gave the impression that the crew's main concerns were travel, food, shelter, and filming. But the reality behind the scenes was far more demanding. The show placed heavy demands not only on time and money, but also on the crew's health, sanity, and even their safety. Each episode typically took around 3 weeks to produce, yet only 3 or 4 of those days were spent actually fishing. The rest was consumed by countless challenges that came with working in extreme environments. Director Kelly Neves once explained how, during a shoot in Peru, while searching for Humboldt squid, the team faced a series of problems that became typical for river monsters. The boat was too small, the crew and their guides struggled with language barriers, seasickness was common, safety measures were virtually non-existent, and there was even the looming threat of pirates. The danger was serious enough that the team ended up with a naval escort for protection. Given these conditions, it's no surprise that the cast and crew didn't emerge from the series unscathed. Injuries and illnesses were frequent, and close calls became part of the job. Jeremy Wade himself has admitted that some of his most dangerous encounters had nothing to do with the fish at all. He avoided disaster when handling an electric eel, but he was less fortunate with other creatures. An arapaima he estimated at 80 pounds once struck him directly in the chest. The impact left him in pain for weeks, and he worried it might have caused damage to his heart. Another painful incident came in Argentina when a catfish's venomous spine pierced the back of his hand, leaving an injury that lingered long after the cameras stopped rolling. Over the years, there were enough accidents that Animal Planet began documenting the most dramatic ones in a multi-part YouTube series, including a torn tendon from a stingray encounter that earned its own episode. Despite the risks, Wade and his team often traveled without a paramedic. Space and logistics made it impossible. Instead, most of the crew underwent medical training and carried small trauma packs with dressings, airway tubes, EpiPens, and other essentials for emergencies. Given the remote jungle settings where they filmed, these preparations were crucial. A satellite phone served as their lifeline, allowing them to reach the production company for advice when reception was available. The production team took these dangers seriously, but their priorities reflected the demands of television. Wade once noted that whenever they called in with an emergency, the first question was always whether everyone was okay. The second question followed immediately: did anyone capture it on film? It underscored the nature of River Monsters, a show built not only on thrilling encounters with giant freshwater creatures, but also on the ever-present risk that something could go terribly wrong. Still, not every dramatic moment was caught on camera. During one bull shark shoot, Wade suffered one of his most serious injuries, but the incident went unrecorded. His hand had been slammed in a car door, leaving him in agony. The cameraman, shaken by the sight of real blood and convinced Wade needed urgent medical care, dropped the camera entirely. The experience led the crew to adopt pre-roll functions on their cameras, ensuring they would always capture a few seconds before pressing record. But physical danger wasn't the only threat hanging over River Monsters. Criticism was too. In 2013, science writer and YouTuber Kyle Hill published an open letter to the creators of River Monsters in Scientific American. His main concern was that the show's dramatic style, using words like man-eater, assassins, and flesh-eaters, combined with reenactments of monster attacks, painted a misleading picture of the fish being featured. Hill feared that audiences might come to see these creatures as dangerous threats, rather than as remarkable parts of nature, which could lead to unnecessary fear or even harm to the animals themselves. He admitted his criticism sounded dramatic, but he stood by his point that if entertainment focused too much on demonizing wildlife for ratings, the real monsters could end up being us. At the same time, he did acknowledge that Jeremy Wade himself seemed genuinely concerned about the welfare of the fish. Wade responded publicly in Discover magazine, acknowledging that the show did play up sensationalism, but he argued it was a deliberate choice. The goal, he explained, was to hook a wide and varied audience, not to spread fear. He rejected the notion of fear-mongering, framing the series instead as a way of confronting fears head-on. For Wade, it was never about painting these creatures as villains, but about understanding them. And through that understanding, learning how to coexist with animals most people would rather avoid. And while those debates carried on, river monsters was quietly becoming a global phenomenon. You see, when river monsters first hit television screens, no one could have predicted just how massive it would become. Jeremy Wade already had years of research and stories to draw from, but 9 seasons meant the team had to keep expanding the list of mysterious creatures. Over time, the show pushed its boundaries, venturing into legendary waters like Loch Ness and even the radioactive pools around Chernobyl. What made the show different was how it ended. Instead of dragging things out until ratings slipped, Wade and his crew decided to step away while the series was still at its peak. The idea was that Wade had already caught nearly every species on his original list, and there wasn't much left that felt new. By the later seasons, the shift in direction was obvious. Season 8, for example, focused entirely on ocean life, an exciting angle, but a noticeable departure for a series built around rivers. Before that, audiences had watched Wade cast his lines in places as far-flung as the Scottish Highlands and the eerie waters near Chernobyl, where he famously reeled in a radioactive catfish. Thrilling as these stories were, it was becoming clear that the original format had run its course. Not long before that ocean season aired, Wade shared in an online Q&A that he had created a personal list of fish he wanted to catch when the series first began. By that point, most of the names on that list were already checked off. It felt like a natural conclusion. In his own words, the subject matter was finite, and he had accomplished what once seemed impossible. By 2017, River Monsters wrapped up, leaving behind one of the most successful runs in Animal Planet history. Ending the show didn't mean ending the adventure. Fishing, travel, and discovery were never just part of Wade's career. They were his life. Since River Monsters, he has returned to television with new projects, including Mighty Rivers, Dark Waters, and Mysteries of the Deep. Each of these shows kept the spirit of exploration alive, taking him to remote, unfamiliar waters where few others would dare to go. Alongside television, Wade has remained deeply committed to conservation. He has spoken often about the importance of protecting freshwater ecosystems and how many species are overlooked simply because they lack the same appeal as more colorful marine life. Yet, as he points out, rivers and lakes hold some of the most fascinating fish in the world, even if they rarely get the spotlight. Wade's relationship with his catches has also been a subject of curiosity. Though he releases nearly every fish he catches, he admits to occasionally eating smaller species, especially when traveling in regions where fresh food is limited. Some choices have been practical, like eating piranha, despite admitting they aren't particularly tasty. Others have been more indulgent. One of his favorites is the tambaki, a close relative of the pacu, known for its unusual horse-like teeth used for cracking nuts. With its rich, organic diet, Wade has described its meat as especially delicious. Even with river monsters behind him, Jeremy Wade has never slowed down. His curiosity, respect for nature, and hunger for discovery keep him moving forward, proving that his adventures didn't end when the cameras stopped rolling. They simply evolved into new stories waiting to be told.